Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're cracking open the world of hacking, but maybe not how you usually think about it.
Right. We're not just focusing on the shadowy figures.
Exactly. We're looking at it through the eyes of the defenders, the ethical hackers, the ones building and, well, reinforcing our digital world.
And our main guide for this is the book Hacking the Hacker by Roger A. Grimes.
It's a really interesting perspective.
It is, because you often hear about the destructive side, right?
Yeah.
The digital sledgehammer approach. Grimes actually uses that kind of analogy.
He does, yeah. He calls the malicious types mall slingers.
Mall slingers, I like that. People who can tear things down fast, much faster than building them up.
He talks about demolishing his own garage, right? Took him just hours with brute force.
It took a carpenter weeks, maybe months to build it carefully.
So the point is, many attacks exploit existing weaknesses. They don't always need the same deep skill as, say, building a secure system from scratch.
Precisely. It's not always about genius-level innovation on the attack side. Sometimes it's just finding that one unlocked door.
But the defenders, the builders, they need that deeper, more meticulous skill. They're the craftspeople.
That's the argument. They have to anticipate the attacks, understand the mindset, and build resilience.
Yeah.
That takes, a different level of thought.
It kind of contrasts with older views, maybe like Stephen Levy's Hackers book. That one sort of romanticized the early explorers.
Yeah, Levy captured that early ethos, the information sharing ideal, though some of it was, let's say, ethically gray.
Right.
But Grimes's book really shifts focus. It argues pretty convincingly, I think, that today's smartest hackers are the defenders, the ones protecting everything.
Because they're applying that deep knowledge to, well, keep things running safely.
Exactly, a critical need.
So our mission today, understand how the attackers operate, the methods they use, but maybe more importantly, learn from the defenders, their strategies, their wisdom.
Think of it as getting insights to navigate the digital world a bit more safely yourself.
Okay, let's dive in. How do hackers actually hack? Where does the book start?
It starts with something called penetration testing, pen testing.
Right, pen testing, ethical hacking, basically. Companies hire people to try and break into their own systems.
Yeah, find the weaknesses before the real attackers do.
Yeah.
Grimes talks about his own experience doing this.
And he says he could usually get in pretty fast, like banks, government, corporations.
Often within an hour. He says the longest was maybe 3 hours, which is, well, it's sobering.
It really is. Makes you think about how secure things actually are.
It does.
Yeah.
And it's not always because the attackers are wizards. It's often just the complexity, A small mistake, unpatched software, boom.
And he mentions this weird win-win scenario.
Sort of. If the tester finds nothing, the client feels good, more secure.
Uh-huh.
But if they find something the client knows what to fix, the only real lose-lose is if the tester finds nothing and then the client gets breached right after. That looks bad.
Yeah, I bet. He also shares some dramatic ways he showed vulnerabilities, like taking webcam photos.
Yeah, or hiding the admin password in a screensaver.
Yeah.
Sometimes you need that kind of, jolt to make the risk feel real.
Makes sense. So after maybe some initial prodding, what's next? Information gathering.
Crucial step, reconnaissance. Before any big attack, they do their homework.
Okay, what are they looking for? The technical stuff, I assume? IP addresses, emails.
Sure, all that. Domain names,
Yeah.
but also human stuff. Senior exec names, employee lists.
Why employee names? For social engineering later.
Exactly. Also, recent software buys, mergers, partners.
Partners. Why partners?
Because if a partner has weaker security, they might be an easier way in. An indirect route to the main target.
Ah, the weakest link idea again.
It really applies here. Security isn't just your own walls, it's your connections too.
Okay, another big theme seems to be unpatched software. That comes up constantly, doesn't it?
It's huge.
Yeah.
Just a massive reason systems get compromised. Thousands of new vulnerabilities are found every year.
Thousands. Wow.
Yeah, something like 5,000, 6,000 publicly announced ones. And while coding practices are getting better,
There's just more code being written.
exactly. So the number of bugs stays kind of stable, maybe even grows. Attackers love those known unpatched holes.
So the takeaway is simple. Update your stuff.
Please. It makes a massive difference.
What about things like eavesdropping? Man-in-the-middle attacks? Those sound sneaky.
They are basically messing with network connections. Eavesdropping is passive listening.
Just scooping up data.
Right. Man in the middle is active. They get between two communicating parties, intercepting, maybe changing data.
And neither side knows.
Ideally, no.
Yeah.
Eavesdropping is super common on, say, public Wi-Fi.
So that coffee shop Wi-Fi, maybe not so safe for banking.
Probably not ideal, no. Use a VPN or stick to cellular data for sensitive things.
Good advice. Okay, so let's say an attacker gets that first foothold. They're in. What now?
They don't just stop, they explore. Internal
It's
reconnaissance.
like a digital burglar casing the joint.
Kinda, yeah. They look at memory, hard drives, network connections, who's logged in, what shares are available, services running.
Building a map of the inside?
Exactly. To understand the environment better and plan the next move. Maybe move laterally to other machines.
Or vertically, gaining more privileges, like admin rights.
Right. Trying to get more control, access more critical stuff. The goal is usually wider access, deeper control.
And then covering their tracks. How do they do that? Is it just deleting logs?
Sometimes. But the book suggests a shift towards blending in more.
Blending in? How?
Instead of noisy deletion, they might operate using the credentials of a user they've already compromised. Use standard admin tools that wouldn't look out of place.
Ah, so they look like legitimate activity.
Makes detection much harder. It's like finding a spy who looks just like everyone else.
Wow. Okay, that's really insidious. This leads perfectly into social engineering, doesn't it? The human element.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
The book really hammers this home. Manipulating people is often the easiest way in.
The weakest link, as they say.
It often is. Social engineering uses deception, psychology, tricking people into giving up info or clicking that bad link.
And phishing is the classic example, right? Those fake emails, fake login pages.
We've all seen them, trying to get passwords, credit card numbers. And then there's spear phishing.
Which is more targeted.
Much more. Tailored to you or your company. Uses information about you, maybe gleaned from social media or a previous breach, to seem way more legitimate. Much higher success rate.
Scary. And it's not just emails, phone calls, too.
Yep. Fake tax agency calls, police scams.
Hmm.
They rely on authority and urgency to make people panic and comply.
And Trojan horses, like the old myth.
Pretty much. Malicious software disguised as something useful. You think you're installing a game update or a necessary plugin.
But you're actually installing malware.
Right. Comes in via email attachments, dodgy download links, fake pop-ups on websites.
So be careful what you click.
Absolutely. The book also mentions purchase scams on online marketplaces, fake checks asking for money back, targeting regular buyers and sellers.
So it's not just big companies being targeted.
Definitely not. Individuals are prime targets, too.
Grimes shares some of his own social engineering tricks from pen testing, right?
He does. Things like fake merger announcements to get info, or even fake legal emails about child support to get people to click.
Wow. That shows how convincing these things can be if they hit the right emotional buttons.
They prey on trust, fear, urgency, curiosity, and one really practical piece of advice from the book:
Yeah.
be super careful installing software directly from websites. Unless you are 100% sure it's the official vendor site.
Don't do it.
Don't do it. Go to the vendor site yourself. Don't click the pop-up link. That's a
Okay.
classic way malware gets spread.
Solid advice. Okay, let's shift gears. Let's talk about some of the defenders profiled in the book, these ethical hackers. Starts with a big name, Kevin Mitnick.
Mitnick, yeah. Very famous, maybe infamous from the early days. A lot of his notoriety came from social engineering as much as technical skill.
He was kind of the archetype of a hacker for a while, but the book focuses on his transformation, right?
Exactly. How he now uses that deep understanding of the attacker mindset to help companies defend themselves. Consulting, books, speaking.
And he really stresses that human element, the social engineering side.
He does. There's a great little story in the book, too. Grimes almost gave Mitnick a USB drive that unknowingly had an exploit on it. But Mitnick was so paranoid about USBs, he refused to plug it in. His caution saved him.
That's telling. Shows his awareness. Okay, next up. Michael Howard at Microsoft. Secure coding guy.
Big time. Really passionate about writing secure code. Co-wrote a very influential book, Writing Secure Code.
And he was key in pushing Microsoft's security development lifecycle, the SDL.
Hugely important.
Yeah.
SDL is basically about building security into the entire software process, not just bolting it on at the end.
Sounds like a fundamental shift.
It was. The book explains it evolved over time, but really gained traction after some major malware hits like Code Red, Nimda.
Right, early 2000s. And Bill Gates's trustworthy computing memo.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Howard was central to that cultural shift at Microsoft, getting developers to think about threats, adding security checks, quality gates into the pipeline. Very pragmatic approach.
Building it in, not adding it on. Makes sense. Who's next? Susan Bradley.
Her focus is really interesting. small businesses, and ransomware.
A huge issue for smaller organizations.
Devastating. She co-created something called the Ransomware Prevention Kit. Information, tools, videos, practical help for businesses that maybe don't have huge IT security teams.
That sounds incredibly valuable, and the money initially went to a good cause.
Yeah, a scholarship fund for women in IT. Really great initiative all around.
Very cool. Then Mark Russinovich, Windows internals guru.
Oh yeah, creator of CIS internals tools, which are legendary.
Essential tools for admins and security folks. And he's famous for finding that Sony rootkit, right?
That was huge. He found this hidden software on Sony CDs that acted like malware, calling it out publicly. Big deal at the time.
Really shook things up. And Grimes tells an older story, too, about finding a registry key.
Yeah, discovering how a simple registry change controlled whether Windows NT acted like a server or workstation just shows his incredibly deep understanding of how Windows works under the hood.
Amazing detective work. Okay, the book then gets into a core technology, cryptography.
The bedrock of so much digital security. Can't really overstate its importance.
The book explains the basics, symmetric versus asymmetric.
Right, symmetric uses the same key to encrypt and decrypt, think AES. Asymmetric uses a key pair, public and private, like RSA, Diffie-Hellman, ECC. Longer keys generally mean stronger security.
And we use this stuff everywhere, often without thinking. Passwords, HTTPS for websites.
Digital certificates, secure email, hard-to-arrive encryption, Wi-Fi security, financial transactions. It's fundamental.
But it's not foolproof. There are attacks.
Nothing is totally foolproof. The book mentions math attacks that exploit weaknesses in the algorithms themselves, like how SHA-1 got weaker over time as computing power increased. It's a constant arms race.
Which leads to Martin Hellman, pioneer of public key crypto.
Along with Whitfield Diffie. Their work was groundbreaking. The book clarifies they first met at IBM, interestingly.
And they faced pushback. People thought the NSA was too far ahead.
Yeah, some thought academic work was pointless against the presumed resources of intelligence agencies. Shows how far things have come.
And Hellman's view on RSA, which built on their work and became commercially huge.
He seems quite philosophical and positive about it now, recognizing the massive industry it enabled. Very gracious.
Okay, moving on to intrusion detection and APTs.
Intrusion detection systems, or IDS, basically the network security guards trying to spot bad activity.
What makes a good IDS?
Low noise, not too many false alarms, high accuracy catching real threats, clear alerts, good context, and triggering the right response. It's a tough balance.
And APTs, advanced persistent threats?
These are the big leagues, often state-sponsored groups, highly skilled, well-funded, playing the long game.
Long game. Meaning?
They aim for persistent access, deep infiltration, not just smash and grab. They use sophisticated methods, 0 days sometimes, often after intellectual property, espionage, serious stuff.
The book suggests most organizations have probably been targeted.
It's a sobering reality, yeah. If you're connected to the internet and have something of value, you're likely a target for someone.
Wow. And Dr. Dorothy Denning,
Right.
early pioneer here.
Absolutely. Her work in the 80s on using expert systems for real-time intrusion detection was foundational. Her 1986 paper is considered seminal.
And she created the lattice security model.
Yeah, focused on controlling information flow, particularly one-way flow, still influential concepts today.
Amazing foresight.
Yeah.
Then there's Michael Dubinsky.
He's involved in modern advanced intrusion detection.
Interesting background, too. Latvia, Israel, got into computers experimenting with RATs, remote access Trojans, for pranks initially.
Quite the path into security. Okay, firewalls, another fundamental piece.
The digital bouncers at the network door, controlling traffic in and out. The book mentions Cheswick and Belivin's book, Firewalls and Internet Security.
Hugely influential. Came out right around the time Check Point released their first firewall product. So it really caught the wave.
Yeah.
They were pioneers.
And they did some early experiments. A packet telescope.
Yeah, just watching traffic go by. Led them to create the first DNS proxy, which is a key firewall function. Shows how practical needs drove innovation.
Necessity is the mother of invention, even in cyber. What about honeypots?
Honeypots are decoys. Systems set up deliberately to look vulnerable, to attract attackers.
Why would you want to attract attackers?
To study them? See what tools they use, what techniques, divert them from real systems. Grimes even used one to catch an insider spy.
A Russian spy. Really?
Yeah, at a defense contractor. Shows they could be effective against different kinds of threats.
And Lance Spitzner is a big name in honeypots.
A major figure. Runs the HoneyNet project. Inspired by Clifford Stoll's The Cuckoo's Egg.
Classic book.
It is. Spitzner does great work analyzing attacker behavior using honeypots. But he also warns against focusing only on tech.
Right, the human element again. He said you can't patch stupid.
Yeah. His point is that phishing and social engineering bypass a lot of technical defenses. We need to address the human vulnerability, too.
Which brings us back to passwords. How do attackers get them?
Phishing, obviously,
Yeah.
keylogging, recording keystrokes, but that usually requires getting malware on the machine first.
Okay.
And a huge one, credential reuse. People using the same password everywhere. One breach exposes multiple accounts.
Guilty as charged, probably for many of us.
It's common. The book also mentions pass the hash. More technical, less attackers move around a network once they're in, without the actual password.
Defenses. Beyond unique passwords?
Don't share them, obviously.
Yeah.
Use strong, unique ones. Enable account lockouts after too many failed tries, though even lockouts can be abused sometimes.
It's complex. Dr. Cormac Hurley is mentioned here, too.
Yeah, interesting guy. Came from signal processing video. Fields very focused on data and evidence.
And he looked at password advice and thought,
Where's the data? He was skeptical of recommendations that weren't backed by solid empirical evidence. Wants a more scientific approach.
makes sense. What about wireless hacking? Wi-Fi security?
Still a big area.
Uh-huh.
Includes eavesdropping on open networks, capturing data, using spectrum without permission, denial of service against Wi-Fi, taking over access points, attacking client devices.
Lots of angles. Any defenses mentioned?
Using encryption like WPA2 or WPA3 is crucial. Also, things like electromagnetic shielding in very sensitive environments, but that's pretty specialized.
And Thomas de Bouvet, creator of air cracking.
Right, that's a well-known suite of tools for Wi-Fi security auditing.
Huh.
Used by defenders to test networks, but yeah, can be used by attackers too.
Dual-use tools, common in security. Okay, back to pen testing for a moment. Grimes shares more stories.
Some wild ones. Hacking every cable box in a country using a simple flaw.
The whole country. Wow.
Yeah. Simultaneously, hacking a TV network and a porn site, which created an ethical dilemma about disclosure. Hacking a credit card company, creating a camera virus.
These stories really show the potential impact. What about the process? Contracts are key.
Absolutely critical. Need a signed contract outlining the scope, what's fair game, what's off limits, NDA for confidentiality, what tools can be used, liability coverage.
And reporting. Ethics.
Thorough reporting of findings is essential. Strict ethical conduct, minimizing disruption of the client's business. It has to be professional.
The book mentions certifications, too, for people wanting to get into this field.
Yeah, CISSP, CompTIA Security, plus ISA certs like CISA, CRIS, vendor-specific ones, too. They help demonstrate knowledge.
Aaron Higby also shares pen testing stories.
He does. Sounds like quite a character. One about compromising a cable company way beyond the target. Another about accidentally setting hardware on fire during testing.
Oops.
Yeah. But he later co-founded FishMe, focusing on security awareness training, tackling that human element, came up through BBSs. Phone-freaking interesting path.
Shows the different ways people get into security. DDoS attacks, distributed denial of service. What are those again?
Basically, overwhelming a target with traffic, flooding it so legitimate users can't get through.
How?
Using things like ping floods, TCP floods, UDP floods, often using botnets, networks of hacked computers to generate massive traffic volume, can target the main site or things it relies on, like DNS.
These can be really disruptive, take down major services.
For sure. Then Secure OS. The book kind of jokes about this.
Yeah, the idea of a truly secure computer being locked away offline.
Right. The reality is modern OSs are much more secure by default than they used to be, but that just shifts attacker focus too.
Social engineering and unpatched software, back to those again.
Always. The book mentions things like common criteria, EAL ratings, protection profiles, PPs for evaluating OS security, highlights secure options like OpenBSD, Queebs OS.
And industry groups, Trusted Computing Group, FIDO Alliance.
Yeah, TCG works on hardware security like TPM chips. FIDO works on better authentication, moving beyond passwords, important work. And people like Aaron Margosis at Microsoft, pushing secure configurations, UAC.
Network attacks again, briefly. The OSI model.
Just emphasizing that attacks can happen at any layer of that network model.
Yeah.
Physical, data link, network, all the way up to application. Eavesdropping, mid-M again.
It senses.
Encryption is key. VPNs for secure tunnels. Using secure protocols like HTTPS, SSH instead of older, insecure ones.
And IoT hacking. Internet of Things.
Same principles as hacking computers, really. Vulnerabilities exist at different OSI layers. The challenge is the huge variety of devices and OSs.
And maybe less security focus from the makers?
Often, yeah. Historically, security wasn't always priority one for, say, a smart toaster maker. That's changing, but it means lots of potentially vulnerable devices are out there.
Makes you think twice about connecting everything. Car hacking, that's real now.
It's very real. Dr. Charlie Miller and Chris Balasek did groundbreaking work showing remote control was possible. Their public demos really forced the auto industry to take security seriously.
That's huge impact. Miller has a background in finding bugs using fuzzing.
Yeah, feeding random data to software to see if it breaks. He's also advocated for paid bug bounties, which are now becoming more common in the car world.
Good to see that progress. Standards and policies seem less exciting, but are they important?
Absolutely essential. They provide the framework. Things like the U.S. Government Configuration Baseline, Microsoft Security Compliance Manager Tool, NIST standards, ISO 2701.
And regulations. PCI for credit cards, APA for health info, Sarbanes-Oxley.
Exactly. The book makes the point that while compliance paperwork can feel like a chore, it drives organizations to actually implement security controls. It's necessary.
Okay, threat modeling, we touched on it, but the book expands.
It's about proactively thinking like an attacker. What are the threats to this system? How could they get in? What can we do to mitigate that cost effectively?
Do it early in development.
Ideally, yes. Saves time and money fixing things later. Think about different attackers, too. Nation-states, criminals, hacktivists, script kiddies. Their motives and capabilities differ.
And Adam Shostak is a key name here.
Big expert. Worked on the configure worm response using data. Wrote the book on threat modeling.
Right.
Developed tools and even a game at Microsoft to help teach it. Involved in creating CVE, too. Hugely influential.
Wow, lots of contributions. What about training and education for aspiring security pros?
Lots of options. Online courses, hands-on sites like Hack This Site, formal degrees, training centers, certifications from EC Council, ISACA, ISKey, SANS. Continuous learning is vital.
And privacy. What's the book's take?
Pretty realistic. It acknowledges true online privacy is increasingly hard to achieve. Even tools like Tor have limits.
But things like Tor and DuckDuckGo can help?
They can improve privacy, yes, but it's often a trade-off with convenience or functionality, a complex issue.
Catching again. A critical point seems to be what gets exploited.
Right. Fully patched systems are rare. But the key insight is most exploits hit old vulnerabilities. Patches existed, maybe for years.
Not 0 days.
0 days are rare in the grand scheme. It's mostly known stuff. And what gets exploited? Changes browser add-ins are a hot target now. Need to patch the things attackers are actually going after.
Prioritize based on real-world threats. Makes sense. Windows Snyder is mentioned.
Yeah, experienced security leader.
Yeah.
Worked at Mozilla, Apple. Co-authored a threat modeling book, too. Deep expertise in building secure products.
The book also talks about writing as a security career path, Grimes' own story.
Yeah, he talks about overcoming struggles with writing to become an author and columnist, encouraging for others, discusses blogs, articles, books, white papers, lots of ways to contribute through writing.
And Famida Rashid, a journalist.
Her advice is key. Learn the tech basics so you can explain security concepts clearly. Communication is crucial.
Finally, a guide for parents if their kid is getting into hacking.
Really thoughtful section. The message is, don't panic. This curiosity can be channeled positively. Acknowledge it, explain the ethics and legality, the potential consequences of doing harm. Then point them to legal outlets. Hack Me sites, hackerspaces, bug bounties, Raspberry Pi projects.
Turn that energy into something constructive and ethical. Revisits Levy's hacker ethic idea.
Yeah, the positive side. Problem solving, learning, and it mentions actual hacker codes of ethics exist. It's about guidance and responsibility.
Good advice. So, wrapping up this deep dive based on hacking the hacker, what are the big takeaways?
Well, I think the main thing is that ethical hacking's strong defense. They're just fundamental now. Understanding how attackers think, especially the social engineering angle, is vital for everyone.
Not just the techies.
Right. And we saw the importance of secure development, crypto, all those defensive tools like firewalls, IDS, honeypots, and the basics, passwords and patching. It all fits together.
Definitely. And hopefully you listening have picked up some useful insights. We really encourage checking out the resources mentioned if you want to learn more.
Yeah, lots of good stuff out there. Which brings us to maybe a final thought. Given how fast threats evolve and how defenses evolve, what's the ongoing responsibility for each of us as individuals in keeping the digital world secure? It's not just for the experts anymore, is it?
That's a great question to ponder. We all have a role to play.